Hello and welcome to the Buena Vista Project, a podcast about Mexican-American history, politics, cultura, y más, coming to you from San Antonio, the Mexican-American capital of the United States. I'm your co-host, Michael Quintanilla.
And I'm your co-host, Elaine Ayala. Our guest today is Congressman Joaquin Castro, who represents Texas's 20th congressional district in the U.S. House. It's no exaggeration that he's one of the most proactive, progressive, and productive Democratic members of Congress. I'm not the only one that says that.
No, I agree with you.
My mom says that too. The two of you at least.
Three of us. Representative Castro, let's dive right into your work on immigration as ICE continues to arrest and detain immigrants, protesters, and even some U.S. citizens, regardless of their statuses, circumstances, or age. As you look back on the last year, what's foremost on your mind regarding these cases?
The brutality of it all, the inhumanity of it. Most Americans have seen the brutality on the streets of Minneapolis, of Chicago, of Los Angeles, but very few people have gone behind those prison walls of Dilley and Carnes and Stipsy and Pearsall and the detention centers across the country. And there is a kind of brutality there. And my goal is to get the Dilley detention center closed. I don't think any child belongs in detention. And Dilley is unique in America because I can't think of another place where a child who has committed no crime is imprisoned. The first time I went there, the youngest person there was 2 months old, 2-month-old baby in that trailer prison.
It's atrocious.
Wow.
Yeah.
I may be wrong about this, but is ICE backing off some of its more aggressive tactics, especially since Minneapolis and the ICE killings of the two white protesters, and just since the firing of Kristi Noem?
We hear mixed reports. We hear that maybe because of politics, because the elections are getting closer, because for Donald Trump and his party, the Republican Party, they're not doing well in the polls ahead of the midterms, that maybe they're pulling back on what ICE was doing, especially out in the streets in places like Minnesota.
The performative stuff.
Yeah, it was, we live in a very transparent world where everybody carries with them a cell phone so they can document the world around them, and then they can transmit it to millions of people and make it go viral very quickly. And I think ICE was operating in a way that didn't really account for that and how much they could damage public opinion about ICE. And I think they finally realized that people seeing folks being brutalized on the street, ripping mothers away from their screaming children, that most Americans, they don't agree with that.
That's right.
And so, I wouldn't be surprised if they're backing off some of it. Also, there's a funding fight over ICE. I don't believe that ICE should get another dollar because they're breaking American laws and they're brutalizing people both on the streets and also behind those closed walls of the detention centers. And so that, I suspect, is another reason that they may be scaling back on some things as well.
Well, since the firing of Kristi Noem as Homeland Chief and other changes in the administration, can you assess for us somewhat what's going on with the Trump administration?
I mean, the Trump administration, ever since 2015, when Donald Trump came down those escalators and talked about Mexicans sending rapists and murderers and so forth, immigration for him has been the number one boogeyman issue. The thing that he's used to divide people, to create this us versus them phenomenon, and to scare people. And for him politically, it has worked many times. But I also think that Americans are waking up to the brutality of all of it. And so, as you can see from almost any opinion poll, the administration right now is in shambles The president has his lowest approval rating. What he's doing on immigration is unpopular. What he's doing on the economy is unpopular. You go to H-E-B or Walmart or wherever people shop, the prices keep going up.
And the gas price.
The gas prices at one point went up $1 in 3 weeks in San Antonio.
Yeah.
The cost of childcare, of rent, of all of these things keeps going up.
And the unpopularity of war in Iran.
That's right. And that's another big issue. San Antonio is known as a military city, USA. Once upon a time, we had 5 military bases here. We still have Joint Base San Antonio. So not only do we have a lot of active duty military who are deployed here, who are stationed here, but we also have a lot of veterans in our community. And it's as if the president never learned the lessons of Iraq and Afghanistan. And now he's on the verge of perhaps sending ground troops into Iran. And that is just incredibly unpopular.
The distraction that it provides.
That's right.
For the Epstein files.
No, absolutely. The fact that we've not been able to get all of those files out is really a travesty of justice for the victims, but also for Americans who have a right to know what was going on. And how government in some ways allowed this to happen.
Congressman, we have to ask you about little Liam, the Minneapolis boy detained in Texas with part of his family and released after your efforts. What's happened to the family since? Where is that situation at right now?
Well, I picked up Liam the last day in January and took him back to Minneapolis on February 1st. And he went into that detention center as a 5-year-old boy who was living a very private life with his family in Minnesota. They were seeking asylum. And he came out of that detention center, that trailer prison, as really an international symbol of the cruelty of the Trump administration. He and his family are still in Minnesota. We've stayed in touch with the family and the attorneys. But the family lost its first round in court on its asylum case. And so they're appealing right now. Those appeals can sometimes take months or even years. So the good thing is that he and his family are still in Minnesota, in the United States, protected from the dangers of their home country. But at the same time, they're in the middle of an appeal, and so I hope that ultimately that they will prevail and that they'll be able to remain here in the country. But that remains to be seen.
Yeah. And certainly Liam's story has lingered in the national consciousness because he represents the most vulnerable inmates in detention, children, which is absurd and just illogical to even say. The case gets to the basic question about the privatization and profit involved in detention centers. How did we get here, and what will it take to turn back, even in a potential Democratic administration?
How we got here. Well, first, I think you have a president whose policies are centered around cruelty. But, it's interesting. We have decided to allow for the commodification of child suffering.
It's profitable.
That's right.
Yes.
For investors to profit off of a 2-year-old baby being in a trailer prison, to allow them to profit off of a 5-year-old boy and hundreds of other children, including many young children, being kept in a prison.
Every bed has a $sign attached to it.
And that's why, there's been a lot of conversation about, well, who works at ICE and what's ICE doing? But remember, there's ICE, and then there's the Texas National Guard, because Greg Abbott has deployed the Guard into these detention centers. So they're helping ICE and doing a lot of the work within those detention centers, the administrative work. But that's the public side. On the private side, you have two main prison and detention companies in this country. You have GEO, and then you have Core Civic. Core Civic operates Dilley. So, for example, when folks have complained sometimes about worms or other things in the food, Core Civic is the one that contracts for the food vendor. Core Civic is the one that's supposed to provide educational services and did not do that for 11 months. There was no educational services for 11 months. They're supposed to provide medical treatment, but oftentimes when kids and adults were complaining about medical issues, They were slow to see them, and sometimes they were denied medical care altogether. And so it's that Core Civic is a private company that's a multi-billion-dollar company that is in part owned by major asset managers in this country. So if you think of BlackRock, Vanguard, they have stakes in these private prison companies, including Core Civic.
And they spend a lot of time in Washington lobbying members of Congress to approve
Absolutely.
those budgets. Okay. Two other issues that are on the public's mind just about now about immigration is birthright citizenship, a constitutional right that is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. And now it's going to go before the U.S. Supreme Court, which could affirm it forever, now and again, or could go the other way.
I'm hopeful, and I believe at the end of the day that the Supreme Court will uphold birthright citizenship. That has been so foundational to our country since the passage of the 14th Amendment. And it's hard for me to imagine, even with a conservative court, birthright citizenship getting overturned. But, look, this court has surprised us before. And so we have to be prepared in the event that it is overturned. But I think it would be a shock to the system and the American way for them to overturn birthright citizenship.
I'm hoping for an irregular decision from the Supreme Court when it has been maintained by all the lower courts and has been maintained in previous cases. We can only hope.
That's right. Yeah, for them to overturn it now would undo, generations of precedent at this point. And so I don't think that they will be that aggressive in an affront to the Constitution. But again, I hope that I'm not surprised, but we could be surprised.
One last question, non-immigration. The budget impasse, the shutdown, even the midterm elections. Let's just say it, Elaine.
Que desmadre.
What a mess. What if a Democratic administration returns to power? How will it begin to address all of the serious problems left by Trump, and how does the nation recover?
Well, first, you're right. It is a big mess. And from the so-called Big Beautiful Bill, the Department of Homeland Security got an extra $150 billion above their annual budget. ICE alone got $75 billion of that. So this idea that they just don't have the money to do what they need to do, that's just insincere. It's just not true. They already, even if the Congress did nothing from here on out for the next few years, ICE would still have way more money than it's had over the years. So they have the money that they need for ICE and DHS. That said, the Congress should go through that appropriations process, and I think that we should vote on a bill for funding DHS. But I will say this, you asked the question about Democrats. It's going to take some time once I think Democrats will win back the majority in the House in 2026. I think we have a chance of winning in the Senate as well. And I think 2026 and 2028 will be like 2006 and 2008 for Democrats, where we had a strong midterm and then a strong presidential year. And so I expect in January of 29, I would say that we will have a Democratic president, a Democratic Senate, and a Democratic House. But it's going to take a lot of work to repair a lot of the damage that this president is doing in so many facets of American life and American society. The economy, starting another potentially forever war, all of the brutality of ICE, just so many different areas of American life. I'm a cancer patient. The cuts to cancer research, for example, including pediatric cancer, all of these different things that are affecting people in many ways, and their effects will be felt more harshly the longer we go on. And we've got about 3 more years of this president. And
it already seems like we've gone through 3 years.
I know. Feels like we've lived a lifetime in the last 15 months.
Every day is a year almost. And so I'm thinking too of the health insurance issue, where we're still encountering such problems and price hikes on our insurance.
There are thousands of San Antonians that lost their insurance coverage or ended up having to get policies that don't cover as much, or they're just paying a lot more
Yeah.
because the subsidies were cut out.
Yeah.
Housing also. I mean, we're
Same
constantly
thing,
hearing
yeah.
about housing
Yeah.
issues.
Childcare. I mean, the
Yes.
cost of childcare. My wife and I have 3 young kids. The
Mhm.
cost of childcare for folks is just, it's like paying for another apartment
Yeah.
or another house.
Or another car payment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. We are running out of time. So, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank all of you for listening.
And you can find the Buena Vista Project on our website, buenavista project.com, and on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Music. We'll be back soon with another episode. So until then,
Hasta la buena vista.
baby.